And yes, it's us. It's us. We're back. It's Shaken, Not Heard, the James Bond podcast that no one's listened to. I am one of your hosts, Elliot Serrano, coming to you from the Geek Den. For folks who watched us in the very first episode of Shaken, Not Heard, I was recording just right over here over my left shoulder and slowly being consumed by the darkness. Because I didn't have the proper lighting set up, but now I do. And if you're wondering, gee, where have you guys been all this time? Let me bring on our Shaken Not Heard co-host, Dave. How you doing, Dave? I'm sorry, I muted you.
There you go. I am well. How are you?
I'm doing good. But to answer the question for everyone, why have we been gone for so long?
I don't know.
Well, technically, we haven't really been gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have been on another show every other week, the MCU Review, where we've been joined by John Clark and other guests to talk about the Marvel movies. So it's not like if you wanted to see Dave and I talking, you couldn't see us. We're around. But why haven't we been talking about James Bond?
Well, we caught up with all the movies. There was sort of, I guess, I don't want to say expiration date, but unlike Marvel, which is ongoing and, there's no end in sight or sign of anything slowing down anytime, the Bond movies come out at a slower pace. We got through them pretty consistently, pretty quickly, the 25 movies. And then the bonus ones we talked about, like Never Say Never Again and the spoof Casino Royale. So we covered the movies. I mean, we could go in dig a lot deeper, and go into the comics and the novels and everything like that. Although I'm not sure how much of an audience there is for that kind of stuff. That's definitely plenty of other Bond stuff to talk about. But I think the stuff that most people can relate to and find interesting, obviously, are the movies.
We talked about The Rock. Remember, we had that one too. And we even talked about the comic books. We talked about some of the Bond comics published by Dynamite. But yes, you're right. Not a whole lot as far as the movies go. Barbara Broccoli has already come out and said they don't even know. They're saying they don't know who they want to cast as the new Bond for the next iteration of the character, but they know whoever it is needs to be able to commit to the character for at least 10 years, which is woo.
Yeah,
it's a long time.
10 years now is like 2 movies.
Yeah, maybe 3, three if they really push it. And when yeah. And then, but when you think about, like, if you commit, you talk about the Marvel movies. If you sign a contract to be in the Marvel movies, that's a good 8 to 10 years of your life there.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of if you want to be part of that franchise. And because of so many things that went on with COVID and production delays, and yes, the studio wanted to give a proper send off to Daniel Craig as Bond. They've decided, really let him do his farewell tour. Give everybody a chance to get accustomed to the idea that that's it. He's gone now, before moving on. So, yeah. But there were things that have been going on to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Bond, which we will be talking about. But before we get into that, I want to thank you for those of you who are watching us on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and on Twitch TV. Thanks for rejoining us after a brief not a brief hiatus. We've been gone for a bit. I mean, Shaken Not Heard's not been on for a while. It's been good 6 months, I think. When was it? When No Time to Die? I think that was the last time we really talked.
No Time to Die came out in November, but I don't think that was the last thing we did.
Maybe we did.
Yeah, okay. It hasn't been anywhere close to a full year, but we've had subsequent episodes. But it has been a long time since we did one of these.
Right. So thank you for rejoining us. Susan, one of our regular viewers, is saying hello. Thank you, Susan, for joining us. Really appreciate your loyal listenership to not only Shaken Not Heard, but also the MCU review. But we are going to talk a little bit about the Amazon Prime documentary that just came out. Well, not just came out; it came out a while back. But I just saw it.
I don't know, 2 weeks ago. It's new.
Is it the documentary? Well, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about that concert special that you mentioned, because that I watched as well. But yeah, it's 60 years of Bond and the sound of James Bond. Two great documentaries delving into the history of James Bond music and theme songs, as well as a concert featuring renditions of all the theme songs done by different artists, not the original artist. Well, let's see. I'm sorry. Shirley Manson and Garbage did "The World Is Not Enough." They were up for that. But I want to say it was the artist Skin did "Live and Let Die." And there were a couple others. I can't remember. All I know is that it seemed
Shirley Bassey did Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever.
Diamonds Are Forever, yeah.
And then Lulu, who did Man with the Golden Gun, performed.
Man with the Golden Gun, yes. She vamped to that one a lot, yeah.
Was, cover artists.
Yeah. And then I forgot who did he did the Sam Smith song.
Writings on the Wall?
Writings on the Wall. I heard some. Oh, and then David Arnold doing "You Know My Name," which was actually surprisingly good. I didn't know David Arnold could sing.
Yeah,
that was good. And yes, Susan says I am binge watching on Prime because now Amazon Prime has all the James Bond movies. They've got them all now. You can watch every single James Bond film on Amazon Prime. Something that people were expecting when they bought MGM Studios and the whole library of Bond films. It was a little bit of a delay there because the films were out and about in different areas. They had to let those licenses lapse before they could just collect them all under the collective umbrella of Amazon Prime. Yeah. And now Jeff Bezos is like, in his yacht with his cat. A la, Spectre Blofeld doing his, Bond is mine. I'm surprised it hasn't been a meme yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting into the music of James Bond, we did want to talk about the themes of Bond. And we had two special guests, one who had to cancel at the last moment because he was not feeling well. Doc 100, or we know him as Mark Primiano, was going to be joining us, but had to cancel. Hope you feel better, Doc. I sure hope he doesn't have what's been going around. But our very reliable music expert, Lizzie Sebastian, who we saw at the top in the intro, is here this evening. How you doing, Lizzie?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good. And it's funny, too, if anyone noticed, Lizzie is in the opening credits, but we're not talking about the Kingsman today. We're talking about the music. I couldn't find the old files to switch out the title card. I said, whatever. It's got Lizzie on it, so we know it's her.
Plus, that might be one of the last ones we did, Elliot. We talked about the Kingsman that came out earlier this year. So yeah.
Because it was made available on Hulu. We were able to finally watch it on Hulu.
Yeah.
But anyway, Lizzie is our resident music expert. I know if you talk to Lizzie about music, she's got lots of opinions. And and when I said, "Hey, I want you to come on and talk about the Bond song," she said, "Sure, but let me do my research first." You can't just come on and throw crap against the wall like I do. You just gotta do your research. She did her research. So the first thing I want to talk about is right now, Dave, you did watch the 60 Years of Bond documentary?
I did, yep.
Lizzie, have you watched it?
I don't have Amazon.
You don't have Amazon? Okay. All right. What did you think? I'll just leave this to you, Dave. What did you think of the of the documentary. Do you think that a person who, let's say, is not a big Bond fan, this is something that they would benefit from watching?
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. It's a nice. There's obviously a lot more. I think it was about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 20 minutes or so. They could have gone probably several more hours talking about the music, but I thought it was nice and kind of cohesive, talking about jumping back and forth, but sort of going in a linear direction of the history of the music from the beginning, how the Bond theme itself was first conceived up until modern day. Probably my only gripe, although it's kind of understandable why they did this, is there was a lot more attention given to No Time to Die than probably there needed to be. But I was talking about this with my buddy Chris Wright, who's been on the show before. And anytime they come out with one of these documentaries to coincide with some sort of significant Bond anniversary, there's always an inordinate amount of attention given to whatever the most recent movie is. So there was one called Bond Girls Are Forever that came out in 2003, which was just about the history of all the women in the series up to that point. And it was just going on and on about Halle Berry and Rosamund Pike, who had been in Die Another Day, which was the most recent film. So they dwelled a lot on No Time to Die, not just Billie Eilish and her coming up with that theme song, but also the scoring of the movie by Hans Zimmer. But I think that the rest of the series still got its fair shake. It wasn't completely overshadowed by No Time to Die discussion. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in that documentary. Talking about why certain artists were chosen when they were, and artists who weren't chosen, or maybe the producers sought out and they were not available for whatever reason. Artists who maybe could potentially do a Bond theme in the future. One thing that I thought was really cool that I mentioned you, Elliot, was they talked about how Radiohead was originally sought out to do the theme to Spectre. And their song is actually called Spectre, but of course the Sam Smith song is called Writings on the Wall. And for various reasons why that didn't come together. But they show a little clip of the main title sequence from Spectre with the Radiohead song, which was eventually officially released, overlaid over it. And it's like, this actually works. I'm still not totally convinced it would work as a Bond theme per se. It's very Radiohead, and I mean that in a complimentary way. It's not like, I think if Radiohead had submitted a Bond theme back in like the mid 90s, like the Benz OK Computer era Radiohead, it could have worked really well because it'd be like, that's before they got super weird and experimental. But the Spectre song is very out there and very like modern day Radiohead. And for that reason, I'm not totally convinced it would work as a Bond theme, but it's a good song in its own right. But then seeing that little clip in the documentary is like, okay, maybe this could have worked. And this is coming from someone who I actually like the Sam Smith song, which I think is somewhat of an unpopular opinion, but Radiohead, at least at one point in their career, could have delivered like a home run Bond.
Well, Sam Smith was really hot at that time too. So, the thing about getting the Bond themes done, you want to get that name, because a Bond theme is more than just a song that goes on the movie. It's going to be played on the radio. It's part of the whole publicity blitz. If you're the one who sings the song, you're out there talking about the movie just as much as anybody who's in the movie.
Yeah.
The only thing that gets me, and mind you, this is spoiler if you haven't seen the documentary yet. Sam Smith says that he and his partner wrote that song in 15 minutes, recorded it like in one take, and boom, it was done. And that's the song they use in the movie. Whereas Radiohead pitched one song, we're told they can't use it. They went back and they did another song, and then they were told, sorry, it's too late. We're already going with Sam Smith. I was like,
yeah, things work out.
So I get that.
And the latter three Craig movies that you were talking about, the songs getting airplay and charting. The last three Craig movies all won Oscars. They're all best song. So, even 50, 60 years on into the series, there's still a ton of attention given to the theme song of the movies.
Yeah, but I think it's an automatic. I think it's a given lately. I mean, remember Billie Eilish won the Oscar for the No Time to Die before the movie even was released.
Yeah.
It's like they were like, so they can say that she's like the youngest artist to ever win the Oscar.
Yeah.
For a theme song. So I mean, there's a bit of the publicity machine going on there, and I don't begrudge it. I mean, that's what it is, and it's not that it's a bad song. I did enjoy it. We had this conversation in previous episodes where I said when I first heard it, I was like, I don't get it. But I'm wondering when they finally put that thing up against the credits and you listen to it, it'll work. And then I was like, when they did that, I was like, either they remixed it or they did something. But then it sounded like a Bond song to me. I was like, okay, this works.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There's something to be said about the visuals of the opening credits matching with the theme to really kind of make it come to life. I remember when You Know My Name, the Chris Cornell song came out. And that's one of my favorite Bond themes. It's probably the top 5 Bond theme for me. I remember when that came out, there were a lot of people like, I don't know if this works. It's too much of like a straightforward rock song. I mean, Live and Let Die kind of is, but it also has that big bombastic orchestral element to it. But I was a big fan of the Chris Cornell song from the very beginning. But then when the movie came out, because the song comes out a couple months in advance of the movie came out and people saw that with all the visual, the imagery in the opening credits with all the the poker game, the poker chips, and the playing cards and all that. Like, okay, now I appreciate this song. There's a lot of people changing their tune because they got to hear the song with the visuals, and it gave them a whole new appreciation. So that's definitely a component.
And then also the documentary, they talk about the Jack White and Alicia Keys song for Quantum of Solace. And even Jack White admitting, going, man, a lot of people hate it. A lot of people hate the song.
Except Prince liked it. So now I'm thinking, man, if Prince liked that song, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's funny because when I listened to it, I remember when I heard it the first time, I'm going, okay, I can see that. It feels, again, because Bond is always trying to capture the, whatever is the zeitgeist at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going, well, okay, it's different, but it worked for me. Is it one of my favorite of the Bond songs? I will say to this point, nothing has come out to top all-time high as far as horribleness. Even Die Another Day isn't as bad as all-time high to me. But anyway, all right. On that note, I'm going to pull in Lizzie here, who actually, before we came on air, was ready to throw hands over Die Another Day.
It's not that I'm ready to throw hands. I just have a different opinion. I can understand people not liking it as a Bond theme song, but I grew up hearing it on the radio as like a Madonna song. I love Die Another Day. Like, I just love that song. But I appreciate the opinion of other people who are like, no, it's a bad Bond theme song. And that's actually, in listening to all of the songs, there are some songs that I was like, this is a good song. I don't know if it works as a Bond theme song, but I'm not a Bond aficionado. I'm a music person, and I like the song. So.
And I'm going to say to that, and I mean, you make a really good point, and as someone who also, when we first started this show, and again, Dave is the Bond expert. Okay, so Dave, he's the guy I go to when I have my Bond questions or anything. And I am a novice, or I was a novice. And when people come to me and now they call me a Bond expert, I'm like, no. He's the expert. I'm everything I learn is from osmosis through Dave. But it's like, but you watch all these movies and then you listen to all the theme songs. You're there. All right. Okay, you can say that Die Another Day is a great Madonna song, but it's not a great Bond song. And they're going, True, but then Nobody Does It Better is a great Carly Simon song. What makes it a great Bond song? And yet there are a lot of people who are willing to accept that for The Spy Who Loves Me. If you listen, if it was called anything but The Spy, if they didn't have that line in there, The Spy Who Loved Me, it was like just like the guy who loved me instead of the spy who loved me, you'd be like, that doesn't say James Bond to me at all. But it's a great Carly Simon song.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, that was my thought. In listening to them, I was like, this is a great Carly Simon song. I don't know if I would count it among my favorite Bond theme songs.
And yet there are a lot of Bond fans who will talk about it being one of the greater Bond songs. I'm like, but what makes it a Bond song?
Yeah. I know, not to put words in his mouth, but Dr. P, I believe, has cited that as his favorite Bond theme before.
Really?
Which is it's not my favorite, but it's definitely one of my favorites.
Mm.
To your point, Lizzie, about certain songs being like, I feel the same. I don't know if I'm going to admit that Dynamite is a good song.
Fair.
I definitely know what you mean about some songs being good songs, but maybe not necessarily great Bond songs. The one that's always been sort of a head scratcher to me is song For Your Eyes Only by Sheena Easton, which a lot of Bond fans seem to absolutely love. And for me, even though I really like that movie, I've never been a huge fan of the song. I think it's a good song, but it doesn't scream Bond to me. And I think the reason I feel that way is because it's too soft. Even there's plenty of themes in the series that are like these big, sweeping, love ballads, power ballads sort of songs. Even those songs, most of them have a little bit of an edge to them, a little air of sort of mystery or menace to them. Probably not all-time high. I would put that song and very similarly, that song and For Your Eyes Only as being, pretty songs, love songs, but they don't scream Bond. But one thing that they do have going for them, any of these songs that have really nice melodies that sort of stay with you, is of course, and this was, was talked about in the documentary, especially with John Barry, who did 11 of the Bond scores, is how the melodies are woven into the score. You can't say that about Die Another Day, however, because that is not. There's not much melody to be talked about in that song. The song actually appears in the movie when they first arrive at the Ice Palace, and they go in and there's the cocktail waitresses walking around. Everyone's got Bond's in his suit and everything, his tuxedo. You actually hear the song playing in the background, like the Madonna recording. But it's not a very melodic song, so it was not really gonna. Probably doesn't lend itself well to like a theatrical score.
Yeah.
Susan chimes in. Yes, For Your Eyes Only was my favorite. It was a lot of folks' favorite. Again, Sheena Easton, very hot at the time. She was, megastar, and at that point, you want to get her. And I will say, though, the opening notes, that haunting, keyboard, that was what sounded very Bond to me.
Okay.
When the song continues, though, and it turns into that soft ballad, that's when it kind of loses me. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Thank you for those of you who've hopped on and are watching us here on Facebook Live, whether you're watching us on Facebook Live, YouTube, or Twitch. Please, by all means, feel free to comment. We see all comments. You tell us something that you liked about the Bond songs, your favorites. We will share your comments on the live stream. Also, if you have never seen the Shaken Not Heard show previously, you can find an archive of all our episodes on our Facebook and YouTube pages. So go to facebook.com/Shaken Not Heard or youtube.com/C, that's C for channel, /Shaken Not Heard. And you'll see most all of the very first episode of Shaken Not Heard is not on YouTube, but the second one forward you'll find on our YouTube channel. Give us a look, give us a listen, give us a like, share us. And by all means, feel free to let us know what you think. So thank you so much, whether you're watching us live on the live stream or you're watching us as on the video archives. We appreciate your support. All right. So what I'm not going to say that we're going to be giving you the definitive best James Bond songs, because let's be honest. This is a topic that has been discussed. I mean, I'm going to tell you ad nauseum. And I have listened to some of the other shows. Ultimate James Bond fan cast, our friends over there had I want to say a 3-hour long roundtable discussion about the James Bond songs and ranking them. So if you want some uber James Bond fans to give you what they would consider the definitive top James Bond songs of all time, check them out. I will put a link to that particular episode here on the Facebook page, and I will link it also in the video description on our YouTube page. What we're going to do here, what Dave, Lizzie, and I are going to do is we're just going to talk about our favorites. And there are 26 songs, but I'm going to ask, for the interest of time, because otherwise we'll be here all night, your top 10 favorite James Bond theme songs. And
how
then
about 5?
You want to do top 5? Okay, then we'll do
a third of all the movies. So
we'll do top 5, and then we'll throw in some honorable mentions there instead of having to really rank them. Because again, we're not going to say these are the best James Bond songs. We're going to say these are our personal favorites. Because I quite honestly have a hard time when someone else tells me this is the best of everything, and this is definitively, these are the best songs. Okay. And and Thomas Jetner, our resident mixologist, why I don't understand why we don't have him on the show today. But it chimes in and goes, what's the better version of Live and Let Die, McCartney or Guns N' Roses? And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's McCartney. Although I was offended when I asked Alexa to play Live and Let Die, and Alexa goes, Live and Let Die, made popular by Guns N' Roses. I go, bullshit. Am I wrong? Am I the only opinion here? Who says
no, but when I was growing up in Tampa, I could tell which radio station was on based on which version they were playing. It was 102.5 The Bone. That played Guns N' Roses. 107.3 The Eagle. It was the Wings version.
Nice. Wings, Eagles, of course. Yeah.
It's really funny because I know Lizzie from when you were at 97.1 The Drive.
Chicago's Classic Rock.
Chicago's Classic Rock, which has been known to play both versions of the song.
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends on when you're listening. Sometimes they do the GNR version. Sometimes the Paul McCartney and Wings version. Depends.
Well, and 20 years ago, when I was listening to those radio stations, Guns N' Roses wasn't classic rock yet.
Yeah.
Now it's a little painful that Guns N' Roses is on our classic rock station.
You think it's painful.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
My joints are turning to ash every time someone calls Guns N' Roses classic rock.
They're
Ellie, I want to mention Tom is here in spirit because I'm enjoying the cocktail he made for our last episode.
Yep. I have them still. I have not been able to share them with John Clark yet. I have them both. I have on my sample and his. I'll be sharing it in the next one. Susan Reed chimes in. How about the Laura George alternative for Spectre? Tell us about that one, Dave.
That's news to me.
Okay, there we go.
One thing that people sometimes get, and she could be completely right about this, and it's just something that flew under my radar. But sometimes people will mix up songs that were rejected or not used versus just like smaller name artists just throwing their hat into the ring and being like, this is maybe I'll strike gold and they'll pick this song and my big break will be a Bond theme. This because there were dozens of songs I remember hearing over the years of, oh, this is going to be the theme song to Quantum of Solace, or this is going to be the theme song to Skyfall. Which is another thing that was talked about in that documentary was, they talked about, in addition to the Radiohead thing, Blondie had their own version of For Your Eyes Only, which a completely different kind of song.
Mm-hmm.
It's, as much as I'm not like I just said a few minutes ago, not a huge fan of the Sheena Easton one. It's hard to imagine that not being the theme of the movie, but there's a night and day difference between that and what Blondie put together. And then also, Alice Cooper had a song for The Man with the Golden Gun, which is surprisingly cool. And I think I'll probably say I prefer that to the Lulu version. Talk about like following up a rock Bond theme, Live and Let Die, with another rock Bond theme with The Man with the Golden Gun. That would have been a cool 1-2 punch. That's a cool song. And there's, if you go on YouTube, you can, search it and you will find people have synced the opening credits of Man with the Golden Gun with the Alice Cooper song, and it works really well. Although the Alice Cooper song is like 5 minutes long, so there's a lot of cutting down because the Bond credits are usually only about 3 minutes or so. But there's probably some others that aren't coming to mind. I know Johnny Cash had one for Thunderball, which is really out there, really out of left field. But it's always kind of fun to think about what could have been with different artists, if and their submissions, and if the producers of the movies had decided to go a different direction.
Had that Alice Cooper song been used, I don't think anyone would be able to criticize the Jack White, Alicia Keys, Another Way to Die, because the Alice Cooper song is like dong 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 dong, just like that old-fashioned Alice Cooper driving. And he goes, "The Man with the Golden Gun," and which sounds very. It would get really dated really fast, but still,
Well, one huge element that recording is missing is it doesn't have the big, orchestral accompaniment.
You need the strings, yes. You need that
from a Bond theme.
Or they could have pulled that in afterwards. Like they would have said, "Okay, we need to pull this in," because you have Duran Duran now does. They did a concert in honor of John Barry, and they had the whole. When they did View to a Kill, they had an orchestra accompanying them too. So I could see them doing that. Yeah. And Susan says you can find the alternative, the Laura George alternative on YouTube. So we'll post that link here on the Facebook page and a link to it on the YouTube page. I'll just gotta find it after we're done with this episode. Okay, let's dive into our top 5 favorite James Bond themes. All 3 of us will go round robin, and then we can discuss our honorable mentions. Again, we can't do all 26 or 27 because some of the Bond movies come with 2. There's one that plays at the beginning, and then there's one at the end. So we're just going to count. Well, we'll just count what's with each movie. So, Lizzie, you're our guest. Hit us with number 1. We're going to go. I'm not doing the countdown. We're going number 1 on down.
Well, I'm gonna have to hit you with 1 and 2.
All right.
Because I have a tie for first. I cannot pick between Live and Let Die and View to a Kill.
Okay.
Both the choices are wrong.
I just love them.
Those are
wrong. That's fair, but no, for me. I mean, honestly, it might be View to a Kill, but you can't disrespect Sir McCartney that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, 3 is Skyfall.
Now, hold on. No, you did your first ones. Okay, we'll do that. Let's talk about those first. Okay, so now Live and Let Die and View to a Kill is like pretty much bookending the Roger Moore era. Live and Let Die. Mm-hmm. Live and Let Die is the first Roger Moore Bond film, and View to a Kill is his last one. So, and I can go with that. That's very much. I remember the very first James Bond theme song that I'd ever heard. And again, I'm not the huge Bond fan like Dave, and I didn't start with Connery. My my Bond fandom started with Sir Roger Moore. The first song I remember not only is the Live and Let Die, but watching the movie again, ABC Movie of the Week, and that opening the credits. That's when I learned that the Bond movies have these crazy psychedelic things going on as a song plays and the credits roll, and it has that voodoo montage, that theme with the bodies of the, well, let's be honest, black women, dancing, because we're in the blaxploitation era by that point. But I remember that really struck me, and I remember going, not knowing so much. Okay, this is another, maybe I'm aging myself, but I remembered Paul McCartney more for Paul McCartney and Wings than I do for the Beatles. So that was like, wow, that's Paul McCartney. I used to think, man, Paul McCartney and Wings, they're awesome. It was Live and Let Die and Don't Say Goodnight, his other song that I would hear later on, which is one of my favorite Wings songs. Anyway, Dave, what do you think about Live and Let Die and The View to a Kill as a top candidate?
I mean, those are both great songs. View to a Kill is a great example of a huge gulf in quality between the movie and the theme song. Talk about a kick-ass theme for a really weak movie. I mean, that's not the only one. There are a good number of weak Bond movies that have great theme songs. I can't really think of many Bond movies that are considered some of the best that have poor. You don't usually think of the opposite. Like, oh, that's a great Bond movie, but the theme song sucks. It's usually the theme song is, on level with the movie itself. Once in a while, you'll get those weak movies that have great themes. Diamonds Are Forever is another example, another great Bond theme, but weak movie. But View to Kill is probably the best example of that, of being, because we've talked about this a million times, Elliot. That's my least favorite movie in the series, but it's pretty much undeniably a kick-ass theme song.
And it had all the elements to be a great Bond movie, and just didn't quite, couldn't bring it together.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your number one Bond theme song?
Me?
Yes.
I think You Only Live Twice is my favorite. I've always loved that song. It's got this cool, we're into the mid, sort of the towards the tail end of the 60s at this point. We've had Shirley Bassey doing Goldfinger in previous films, and then Tom Jones doing Thunderball. And so we get into this song that has a little bit more of a kind of a psychedelic flavor to it, and a little bit more meditative than the previous two movies. And I've always just loved that. I love the strings. They're just so beautiful. I love the way that song is worked into the score of the movie, all the scenes where he's in Japan. Probably that movie, a lot of people don't love it, but I think it's maybe the best example of really showcasing the setting where, at that point, the 60s, a lot of people, most people, I would say, around the world hadn't really been exposed to Japan in that way, and seeing it, showcased the way it was in You Only Live Twice was new to them. And just those visuals with the accompaniment of the music, it's just a wonderful theme song.
Lizzie, what do you think of You Only Live Twice?
Honestly, I took notes while listening, and I wrote meh. Which I'm sitting here, I'm like, I need to go back and listen to this. But hearing Dave's explanation, it's one of those where if I knew the movie better, I probably would have a different opinion of it. But just listening to it, I just wrote meh.
Yeah.
Robbie Williams will sample that song for his song Millennium. So that's when I remember going, those strings, which is beautiful. I agree. And I remember when the only thing that kind of bothers me about that theme song is that it gets like it tries to emulate like an Asian type, Far East, with the ding, 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 the plucking of, the strings on like that. That's the part that kind of throws me off. Had they just stayed just with the the beautiful strings, the sweeping orchestral sound to it, I would have been like, oh yeah, this would have been like my top song because of that melody, which is beautiful, which they will then they get revisited a few times in future James Bond films. I know Hans Zimmer even pulls in a little bit of it into in the No Time to Die soundtrack. There's a brief snippet of it in there.
Yeah.
So I would agree there. But I can see I can go there. I can see that. Although when Dave explains it, and especially
Right.
when I watch that documentary, and you see everything that goes into the songs and what they're doing, it really gives you a new appreciation of it. So I mean, again, as still I consider myself a novice. This has been as much a learning thing for me. I am telling you, Dave, I have so much of greater appreciation of Bond now than I did in the very beginning.
Good.
And my number one song is Live and Let Die. I mean, I showed my card already. That's the first, to me, would be the first time James Bond would come on my radar. Roger Moore, for the longest time, would be my Bond because he was the one I saw. I didn't see any of his movies. I saw all his movies. His ones from the 60s. I saw them on television again when they would do like the ABC movie of the week. You see it, and you never missed the theme song in the beginning. And every time Live and Let Die was on, I had to watch that opening credit scene because the song just rocked. And it's like I still listen to it, and it will humble you too. Because if you ask Alexa to play the karaoke version of Live and Let Die, and you got to try to hit those notes on your own, not going to happen. So there we go. All right. Number 2, Lizzie.
Well, we already kind of covered
With
I was Live and Let Die and View to a Kill.
View to a Kill. So you want to make that your 1, 2?
Well, no, yeah, those are. I would probably put View to a Kill.
I'm allowing you to have code number 1. So let's say
we'll just time. Spot. Yeah.
What's your next spot? The next one down.
Oh, 3 would be Skyfall.
Skyfall. What is it about Skyfall?
I love Adele, but it also Skyfall's my favorite Bond movie. I've only really seen the Pierce Brosnan ones, and then I think we talked about this when I did Spectre, like snippets of the first 2 Daniel Craig's, and then Skyfall and Spectre now. But Skyfall just felt like just such a return to form that I didn't even know was the form. It just felt like such a good movie. And I think the song Skyfall has the same gravitas that the film Skyfall has.
Yeah.
And it's just delightful to listen to. So that's why it's number 3.
Skyfall was an anniversary film, right, Dave?
Yes. It was the
50th anniversary.
50th, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I remember they made a big deal out of it.
Yeah, okay. No, you're right. Yeah, because then you had Adele, who has in the tradition of Shirley Bassey and all the great female vocalists, and plus she's a British, artist. I get that. Dave, what do you think about that as the next?
Skyfall is a great song, and I think for all the reasons you mentioned, it felt like, because I know, especially coming off Quantum of Solace, which that song, Another Way to Die, was very divisive, to put it mildly. It did feel like a return to form. It seemed like that's a song that, in the mold of Goldfinger, Thunderball, Diamonds Are Forever, those types of song that Shirley Bassey could have sung. And that's, for a big anniversary like that, 50th anniversary, that's what they needed. They weren't going to, have the 50th anniversary film have the Radiohead Spectre type song to go with it. Mm-hmm. That was going to divide the fans. They had to have something that just screamed James Bond, and that song does. And with the Craig films especially, it seemed like, especially the last 3 or 4, there was that real concerted effort to find like the real kind of hot performer, someone who was like had huge chart success recently, or just released like a Grammy Award winning album, or just really big at the time. So that's like when Radiohead was rumored, or at least when they were under consideration. It would have been cool for me because I love Radiohead, but realistically, I was thinking, yeah, I mean, Radiohead probably not the huge name they were back in like the late 90s, but like someone like Adele, So Hot, or Sam Smith or Billie Eilish, who were such big name artists at that moment in time when that movie came out, make much more sense. So I don't expect, like, whenever the next movie comes out, I'm not guessing it's going to be Radiohead or one of those acts that's been around for 25, 30 years doing the theme. It's probably it might not even be anyone who's on our radar right now, because it might be someone who's no one knows of at this moment in time, but 3, 4, 5 years from now is going to be a huge artist, and whose name's going to be all over the place.
I'm calling it now. The next James Bond movie will not only star but also have the theme song sung by Harry Styles. Harry Styles is going to
Lil
star
Nas
as
X.
Bond and do the theme song. He's going to do a double feature there.
That's gonna be Lil Nas X.
Lil Nas X
As both.
as
Yeah.
both. Okay, there we go. Dave, what's your next? Your number 2.
My second favorite theme, I could safely say, I think, is The World's Not Enough. That's another one where not quite on the same level of View to a Kill, but there's a big gulf in quality between the movie and the theme. I remember for the longest time, World's Not Enough was, it always will have a little soft spot in my heart because that was the first Bond movie I saw in theaters. For the longest time before I really got into the movies and the earlier movies, I really loved that one. But over time, it's fallen down quite a bit on my rankings. But the theme song is fantastic. It's to me, that might be the most underrated Bond theme song, and maybe the best. Personally, to me, the best Bond theme song since the 80s. I think that song doesn't quite get the love that it deserves.
I remember,
that sort of winding the string melody just kind of sticks with you, and it appears frequently throughout the score, and it just it has that sexiness to it, that mystery to it, that you want in a Bond theme.
And the movie itself has a little S&M in it, so
Yeah.
My number 2 was to take a step back, was View to a Kill.
Okay.
Because again, rocket song, and also I love the story, which they confirmed it on the documentary, where the guy from I forgot the guy's name, the guitarist from Duran Duran.
Simon Le Bon.
Yeah, not Simon Le Bon, the guitar. His
it's escaping me.
Roger something, or I think something like that, Robert something. But anyway, he was the one. He goes. Maybe it was the being young and being popular. But he goes, the dude went up to one of the producers. I don't know if it was Broccoli or Wilson or whoever, and said,
Broccoli.
Was it Cubby Broccoli? Yeah. And then they go, when are you going to do a Bond song that doesn't suck? And he went, you want to do it? I went, yeah. And it's like the whole, you know what? We're going to put our money where our mouth. And I'm telling you, one of the best Bond songs. They knew it. They knew exactly how to marry their own song, their own style, the way Duran Duran sounds, with what you expect from a Bond song.
He kind of had a little bit of a point, because for the prior decade before View to a Kill came out, you had a lot of these sort of middle of the road, soft rock type songs, which really kind of, I know a lot of people love it, and I, including myself, but it really started with Nobody Does It Better, Carly Simon, and then Moonraker with Shirley Bassey, Sheena Easton, For Your Eyes Only, Rita Coolidge, All Time High. 4 or 5 songs in a row of these female pop singers, very inoffensive light rock type songs. And then you get View to a Kill, which is like the polar opposite. So which is funny because that movie, I know I'm beating a dead horse because how much I dislike that movie, but it's like that would have been a perfect theme to accompany the introduction of a new James Bond. It doesn't feel like, and I've said, there's another thing I said before, Octopussy, I think, should have been Roger Moore's last movie because it feels much more appropriate to Roger Moore. Everything in View to a Kill is skewing towards younger. You have much younger love interest, much younger villain. You have this more modern plot that it's about computer chips like that. But then you get the center of all it, you have nearly 60-year-old Roger Moore. And it's like, no, you shouldn't. You started with Timothy Dalton in this movie. Start with the young James Bond, the young hip James Bond to go along with everything that's surrounding him. And then you have the young hip band doing View to a Kill. So it's like, it's this weird sort of like dichotomy of the sound, but then everything that you're seeing on the screen feeling very kind of played out and tired.
Yeah, but I can't. I think Roger Moore deserves better than going out as James Bond in clown makeup. I mean,
that is one of the best scenes in the whole franchise.
As someone who's put on clown makeup, you cannot put on makeup that quickly, that immaculately in 5 minutes or whatever he did it in, because you'll come out looking more like Heath Ledger.
Yeah,
in Batman in the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
All right, Lizzie.
What am I on, 4?
Now we're on 3 still. Well,
but I did 3.
Well, we're counting your 1 and 2 as 1, and then your 2.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the hopefully universal opinions of. I think my 3 would be Diamonds Are Forever.
Ooh,
choice.
That's a good. Yeah,
it's just really good.
Wow,
when I was listening to it, it also like the first thing I wrote down was like, "Ooh, spooky." And then and it's just Shirley's the queen. We just gotta give her Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah.
Well, how did have you seen the movie Diamonds Are Forever?
No.
Okay, so you're just going on the song by itself.
Yeah,
okay.
I am here to just give you my musical opinions.
Gotcha. Because it's true. It's like when you listen to that song, and then Shirley Bassey will sing it in the musical special that that's on Amazon, where she does Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever, and will bring the entire crowd to their feet, because that one, yes, it's got that. When I would go back finally and start watching the Roger Moore films, Diamonds Are Forever would be the one that I go, oh, now that's James Bond. That speaks. Not only does it have that great, she has that great voice and that great theme, but it's like international diamonds, all this kind of stuff. Although even the film itself kind of like underplays all that great, could have played it up more. But the song itself, to me, told a better story than the movie did. So, yeah.
By the way, Elliot, I wanted to chime in. My sister Rhonda texted me and said that the lead guitarist in Duran Duran is Andy Taylor.
Andy Taylor, thank you.
Yes,
thank you. Yes, not John anything or whatever, as I was saying. Andy Taylor, and it's funny because when you see them in the documentary, Andy Taylor still has the same hair. He looks pretty good. Simon Le Bon, he needs to hit the Stairmaster a little more. If you ask me, if you want to be the front man for a team,
be nice.
I mean, I can't criticize. I
love Duran Duran.
No, don't get me wrong. They're still awesome. I think they were just in Chicago too.
They were
touring. Yeah.
Don't remind me.
Oh, you didn't see them?
No.
My buddy Brandon Jur was a huge Duran Duran fan. I believe he saw them when they were out in the West Coast. So, and he had been waiting because they postponed their concert. I don't know how many times for the COVID. Oh no, I take that back. It wasn't Duran Duran. It was Depeche Mode. He's a big Depeche Mode guy. Yeah,
that's another artist done an interesting Bond theme at some point.
Yeah, that you would have thought. You would have thought that Depeche Mode would have done one. Your number 3, Dave?
We talked about how some of the themes in the series, or some of the films in the series, have multiple themes. My number 3 is going to have to be "We Have All the Time in the World" from Secret Service. Sung by Louis Armstrong, beautiful theme. I think it might even be better associated with that movie than the title song from that film, which is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is an instrumental theme. And it's just such a beautiful song. We had it played at my wedding. As we talked about in the past, it was brought back and worked into the score for No Time to Die, which echoes a lot of things that happen in that movie, echo a lot of things that happen in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It's just a wonderful song. I love that song so much.
It will be, I think Louis Armstrong did that song before his passing.
Yeah, not long before he passed away. They talk about that a bit in the documentary. Yeah.
He said he was very grateful that they asked him to do it. And yes, it's I'll be honest. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I remember when I heard it the first time, because when we go back, if you go back and you watch earlier episodes of Shaken Not Heard, look at the episode where we talk about On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That film, George Lazenby's only outing as James Bond, is one of the talkiest James Bond movies out of all of them. I mean, I'm telling you, George Lazenby, for being a guy who had no acting experience, the dude was just a clothing model, and he had never acted in a movie before. They said, okay, guess what? We're not even going to give you that many we'll give you action scenes, but you're also going to have so much dialogue to talk. Opposite Telly Savalas, of all people, a veteran actor, someone who knows his stuff. I remember just being so done with the movie that I didn't give the song its credit by the time you get to the end and you're listening to it. But when you listen to it now, and I'm just like you with You Only Live Twice strings and melody, All the Time in the World, that melody that they have for that, that one works even better for me than the You Only Live Twice, because there's no funky thing that they do with it. And yes, Louis Armstrong has such a soulful voice. It's perfect. I'm telling you, it's perfect. I would put that and the other song that everyone knows Louis Armstrong for. I See.
So What a Wonderful World.
Yeah, What a Wonderful World. Those two, the two greatest songs that he will have ever done.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. And then my number 3 is actually would have been Garbage. The World Is Not Enough, because again, that was a comeback for me. I remember going, wow, this is a great song. Great song. All right, number 4, on to Lizzie.
Goldfinger. It's my dad's number 1.
Goldfinger.
So.
Why?
And I say that I've only seen the Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig ones, but I've seen Goldfinger.
Good.
Everyone, I feel like everyone's seen Goldfinger.
Yeah.
How have you not seen Goldfinger?
I've seen it. I mean, well, I have.
No, but I'm saying the general you. Odd Job and all the.
Yeah. See, that's one of those movies where I think people remember all the characters and some of the funky situations, but you don't remember the actual movie. So when you actually sit down and watch the movie, you're like, oh, I don't remember it like this. That really happens? Oh, wait. Goldfinger is this big mastermind orchestrating this huge plot to irradiate all the gold in Fort Knox. But when we first meet him, he's sharking people at a poolside, like Morty Seinfeld or something.
Del Boca Vista.
Del Boca Vista.
Yeah.
So, but great song. Don't get me wrong.
I was going to say, you can't fight with Shirley.
I can't. No, I can't. Although, again, and the problem, too, is for folks, I mean, I couldn't watch Goldfinger. I couldn't listen to the song without thinking about Goldmember.
Yeah.
The Mike Myers parody of it.
Yeah.
I love gold.
It is true that when I was listening to it again recently, I did want to say member in my brain, like gold member, and I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. So, yeah.
Okay,
But it's still just iconic.
Thomas is screwing with me in our group chat on Facebook and tweeting Seinfeld gifs now. So, okay, hold on. Okay, Thomas, you've got so much time right now. Hold on a second. Okay, he thinks he's so funny. I'm gonna bring him into this. I just sent you I'm sending you to the green room, Mr. Chetner. Come and join us. What's your we're on number 4. You're number 4, Dave.
I think you know my name from Casino Royale, which you talked about earlier in the show. I love Chris Cornell. I thought that was such a bold choice, especially to introduce. I talked about how View to Kill felt sort of not really fitting, capping off Roger Moore's era, and that it would be a cool way to introduce a new Bond. You know my name, Casino Royale, makes me think of it. That's why I think that way. Is that was such a departure, especially from the Brosnan movies. Like, we're going to have this hard-edged theme for this hard-edged modern take on James Bond, and the movie the theme fits the tone of the song fits the tone of the film so perfectly, and it has those little sort of shades of the Bond theme in it without actually incorporating the Bond theme. Much like the movie itself, you don't get the actual full-on Bond theme till the very end, when he says the famous line for the first time. You see him in the three-piece suit with the big gun and everything. It's great, and it would surprise me. Obviously, Chris Cornell gone way too soon. He was the first Bond title song singer to pass away. Obviously, died very prematurely. He still had many years left. But that was, when that happened, it was a shock. But it was also, as a Bond fan, it was a shock knowing he was the first one to go, and we've had all these other. I think Shirley Bassey she might be 90 or in her late 80s, and I'll tell you that show at the Royal Albert Hall that they had up on Amazon, the Bond tribute show, she outsang a number of her younger contemporaries.
Yeah.
And it's not just because I'm more familiar with her, but I mean, she sung the hell out of those songs still at her age, and put a few of those other artists to shame.
Yeah. There were some things, there were a couple of them, they were just out of tune. It's just like they were just a note, like half a note off. I'm like, it was starting to be like, in the beginning, I was like, okay, what's going on here? They're not finding themselves. No, they kept going through, and
we were talking about I can't remember the name of the artist, Celeste, I think her name was.
Yeah.
You Only Live Twice, and that was just, man, that did not work for me. It was almost like I got the impression she wasn't even familiar with the melody of the song. She was putting so much of her own spin on the song, it almost was unrecognizable. Other than the music, the musicians accompanying her. If it weren't for that, other than the lyrics, you wouldn't even know what song she was singing. So that didn't do anything for me.
She sounded nervous to me. I mean, the whole time she sounded like really nervous.
Yeah, that's true.
And my number 4 is actually Diamonds Are Forever.
Nice.
Because and I've gotten a new appreciation for the classic Bond songs. I mean, if we had this talk, like, let's say last year, earlier on, I would have ranked a lot of the more contemporary Bond songs higher up and in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
But because I've gained a lot more appreciation for the earlier stuff and how it's really held up. And out of all of them, Goldfinger, yes, Goldfinger is the song. That's the one when Shirley Bassey is belting it out. You're like, holy cannoli. She's like, just whoa.
Yeah.
But Diamonds Are Forever has that whole thing that first it has that epic, vocal to it, but then it really goes doom to doom to doom. It turns into like a kind of like almost like a dance melody, and you're like, diamonds are forever, 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 and you're like, oh yeah, haha. That's like that one when she starts. I'm going along with it.
Yeah. As the little wah wah guitar happening.
Yeah. So that one, and it doesn't suffer from any cheeky cheesiness to it that the "You Only Live Twice" suffers from. Again,
I think that what you're describing with "You Only Live Twice" is more the way the song is used in the score, because those little sort of Asian elements, they're not really in the Nancy Sinatra song, but the way the song is used in the score, the various cues on the soundtrack, it has those, trying to sound Japanese sort of thing, which I get.
I remember something kind of like that in the beginning.
Okay.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the only thing that ruins it for me. But then you get into the strings, and they're going, oh yeah, Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
Which is really good. All right, Lizzie, number 5.
Probably shouldn't be a shocker, knowing that I am a massive U2 fan, but Goldeneye is my number 5.
Oh, I completely forgot that
Bono and the Edge.
Bono and the Edge
wrote it.
And
Tina Turner. Yeah.
That's
but
one of my.
Really shouldn't be a shocker.
It's too bad you haven't seen. It's in the documentary about it. Tina Turner talks about hearing the track that Bono and the Edge send her, because they had, according to Bono, he said, we never intended to sing it. We wanted her to do it, but we wanted to give her an idea of what it would be. And you even get to hear the Bono version of it. And Tina heard it and goes, I don't know what to do with this. Does he want to sing this?
She did a great job.
She did, yeah.
I mean, I think U2 could have done a cool Bond theme where they were performing it. But again, just to go back to Goldfinger for a second, Goldfinger, both the movie itself, you could argue every Bond movie that's come since Goldfinger is trying to recapture that same magic of that movie. Arguably every Bond theme since Goldfinger is trying to capture the magic of that theme song. GoldenEye, Skyfall, very much are kind of in the mold of Goldfinger. So GoldenEye is like, other than the obvious similarity of gold being in the title, the big triumphant return of James Bond in theaters for the first time in 6 years, new Bond actor, but we're in a post-Cold War world, but we still want to remind you that this is undeniably James Bond. So that song with the horns and everything, you get Tina Turner to sing it, very much kind of a throwback sounding Bond theme. I like that song. My only gripe with it is those very thin sounding horns. I don't know what it is. The horns just sound very thin and like tinny compared to Goldfinger or Live and Let Die, those types of songs. But the song itself, having been performed by Tina Turner and then also knowing that it was written by U2, definitely a cool song.
And it feels like a U2 song too when you hear it, even with the horns. Da 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 da. I'm like going, yeah, this sounds like something U2 would have written.
Well, even in the documentary, when you hear you mentioned you hear a little bit of the demo. I could have seen that working. Like, it's again, you Tina Turner is so synonymous with that song, but I could have seen a U2 performed version of GoldenEye still being a hit. Maybe not the same level of Tina Turner, but it still could have sounded cool, fully produced with all the horns and orchestra and everything. It could have been cool.
I wonder if they've done it when they've been touring. Like Bono goes, oh, Tina Turner did this, but I'm going to do it now.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be so if I did a little bit of digging like on YouTube or something, if somebody has taken the demo and cleaned it up a little bit and tried to add the horns to it just to kind of give an idea of what like a fully realized version, U2 version could sound like.
And what's your number 5, Dave?
I think I'll have to cap off my top 5 with the classic, which would be Live and Let Die. It was a tough choice. It was either that or Nobody Does It Better. Honestly, it depends on my mood what day you ask me. But it probably has to be Live and Let Die. I mean, a Bond theme done by a Beatle, you can't go wrong.
Or a Wing.
Or a Wing. I love the bit in the documentary when they're talking about Paul McCartney's talking about having done the theme and submitting the demo, and then Harry Saltzman was like, "Well, the song's great. We just have to figure out who we want to have sing it."
Yeah, I know.
George Martin's like, "Well, I was trying to find a tactful way of telling him that if you don't let Paul McCartney sing the song, he's not going to let you have the song."
Yep.
Although they did say, and this also would have been really badass, that they considered Aretha Franklin. And it's like, oh man, what a missed opportunity that was, having her not having done a Bond theme. And
Man,
he really
yeah.
doing that song, but just any Bond theme, like during
I was gonna say, have her do "Man with the Golden Gun." 'Cause I didn't like that one.
yeah, that is
Don't take away "Live and Let Die."
yeah. When you're talking about songs where the rejected or unused theme is widely available to listen to, I would say, to me, it's a pretty easy choice. I do prefer the Alice Cooper version to the Lulu version. That is one of the weaker themes to me. That's an example of a kind of a weak movie with a weak theme. I don't hate the Man with the Golden Gun, but it's definitely not one of the best.
Which is a shame because, again, it's really, you got Christopher Lee
Yeah.
and Hervé Villechaize,
Yeah.
who is one of the all-time great Bond henchmen, Nick Nack.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, survives to the end of the movie. You keep waiting for Nick Nack to come back for his revenge. I do want to address Thomas's, when he talks about the better version of Live and Let Die, since that's, was your number 5, Dave. Is it McCartney or Guns N' Roses? I say McCartney because for some reason, every time someone does a cover of Guns N' Roses, they always start the Live and Let Die in the bridge like a beat late. It's like whenever Paul McCartney goes, and Live and Let Die, and it seems like when Axl Rose does it, it seems like when he gets to that part, he waits a beat and then he goes too soon. I'm trying to remember what it is. And it just sounds off to me because I've heard the Paul McCartney version so many times. Whenever anyone does a cover to it, do anything you want with the rest of the song. Hit the bridge on the right note, damn it. And then I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
My number 5 is All the Time in the World. And that is actually very new. Again, it's a result of my appreciation now of not only that song, but that melody and everything, and how timeless it is. It is. But again, if you had played that song for someone who didn't know a lick about James Bond, they'd never seen a James Bond movie before, and then they listen to it, they'd go, "Oh, that's a great Louis Armstrong song."
Yeah.
And then you sit there and go, "Do you know that's for James Bond too?" They go, "That is." Let's be honest. That's not a song that sounds like you would throw in a James Bond movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a great Louis Armstrong song, but they make it fit. And yes, I know there's there are the lines from On Her Majesty's Secret Service that so many people connect that with the poignant ending of that film, and George Lazenby saying, looking over, spoiler, his dead wife, and saying, he's having a hard time accepting that she's dead, and go, what do you mean? We have all the time in the world. It's so poignant. And add to that we won't get to see him play James Bond again.
Yeah.
There's so many things wrapped up in that movie, in that song, so many ironies that are associated with it. That is definitely a song. It cracked my top 5 finally. Might not have before. Lizzie, honorable mentions.
I have a couple that I think are good songs, but I don't want to say they're great Bond songs.
Okay.
The one we've already discussed, Die Another Day.
Right.
The other one is the Aha song, The Living Daylights. I heard that and was like, oh, this is actually a pretty rad song.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works as a James Bond theme song, but I do know it came after View to a Kill, so I can see where they were going with that. I don't think it lives in the pantheon of great Bond themes, but I enjoyed it, so I wanted to throw that out there. And then listening to you, Dave, this probably does count as a Bond theme song, but the You Know My Name and Nobody Does It Better stood out to me as good songs, but in listening to them just as songs, they didn't really strike me as Bond theme songs. But as you are a Bond aficionado and named both of them,
Yeah.
I think, on your list, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they are great theme songs. They're great songs.
Yeah.
So
Well, there is something to be said, though. I mean, you hear these songs, and we've said it before. It's kind of like, okay, I hear the song. I need to see it in the opening title credits scene. I need to see it. Then that's the thing about a James Bond movie. It's amazing that that credit montage in the beginning can either make or break a song.
Yeah.
The case in point, the song that they do for Never Say Never Again, which is not an official, it's not an Eon movie, so people will say it's not really a Bond film, although I think it's probably one of the better Bond films. And the weakness to that movie, if you ask me, the weakness to it is it doesn't have the music. It doesn't have the Bond theme. It doesn't have a cool Bond opening credit. You go on YouTube, you find someone made a cool opening credit scene for Never Say Never Again. You're like, okay, that feels like a Bond movie.
Yeah.
You rescore it with real James Bond, a John Barry type score with the Bond theme. You're there going, okay, yeah, this works. And the more and more I look at it, I'm like, it felt like kind of like if this were a real Bond movie, Never Say Never Again would have felt like the Dark Knight or Logan of Bond films. It would be like the last Bond movie, or the last Connery Bond movie.
Yeah.
And you're there going, oh, yeah. Which is a testament to how much the songs have to meld with the narrative of the film for them, for the movies to really work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll tell you, Never Say Never Again, being a remake of Thunderball, I actually liked it more than Thunderball. It had more action for me.
Yeah.
It was Sean Connery being a badass. There's a great scene on the motorcycle in his black tuxedo on a black motorcycle, black helmet, going, man, he's a bad mofo. Has one of the raunchiest sex scenes that you'll ever see in a Bond movie.
That even to this date, like
yes.
later, that's still true. Yeah,
it is. It's one of the raunchier sex scenes, but you're like, they really pushed it with this. Yeah. And it looks it's Irvin Kershner giving it a real visual flair. So when people say, it's not great, but then talk about the folks who were like, Bonnie Tyler, I believe, was supposed to do the original theme to Never Say Never Again. And when she found out it wasn't an Eon production and it was, separate, she went, nope, no, thank you. And she left. She says, for all these bands that wish they'd done a Bond film and regret not being able to do it, Bonnie Tyler goes, that's one I'm glad I missed. So,
yeah.
Any honorable mentions for you, Dave?
I will say I enjoy most of the Bond themes. There are only a few that I just can totally do without. Ones that probably just barely missed the top 5 would be, as I mentioned, Nobody Does It Better. It's a flip trade-off between that and Live and Let Die. Either one of those are probably interchangeable for top 5. I really like the theme to Moonraker. I think it's a really pretty song.
Even though Shirley Bassey hates it.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's the weakest of the 3.
Yeah, of her songs, it is. But still, for her to come out and say she hates it is like,
Yeah,
ah,
that's aggressive.
yeah. Because I actually really like the Moonraker score. The
It's
whole-
my favorite.
yeah, it's probably one of the
John
best of all
Barry's
the
best
scores.
score. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's cues in that score that, you know, when Bond first goes into outer space and just kind of the majesty of him seeing the space station for the first time. It's like, man, John Barry just nailed that in a musical sense. That one has a fantastic score. Also has the final appearance of the 007 theme that appeared a lot in the earlier Connery movies and would never be heard again. But Diamonds Are Forever would probably be very close to making the top 5 cut. I mean, there's just been a lot of great themes in the series. I'm curious what you all would say is I think I probably know what Elliot's answer would be, the worst theme or the worst themes in the series.
Lizzie, I'll let you go first.
I didn't like. I'll give you 3.
Okay.
I didn't like For Your Eyes Only, All Time High, or The Man with the Golden Gun.
Okay.
Those were they weren't really well, and the Jack White and Alicia Keys one didn't really do it for me.
Explain why.
For that one or all of them?
Any of them.
Okay.
Like I can tell you why All Time High doesn't do it for me, but why? Why would you think?
So For Your Eyes Only and All Time High, I had the same comment of like they were okay songs, but they didn't really make a theme song for me. You know, I just didn't really. They didn't inspire me to excitement, if you will. All the other ones were like, oh, you're going to watch a movie. Man with the Golden Gun was just like a letdown to me after Live and Let Die. It felt like they were trying to like recreate that magic and not do it well.
Yeah.
And then Another Way to Die was just not great. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I'll put it that way.
What about as a Jack White song? Let's say if it was just a song by Jack White and Alicia Keys.
As an experimental like Jack White song, sure. But I also don't really listen to that side of Jack White's discography. Like it's not my wheelhouse. So, but it really didn't feel like a theme song. It felt disjointed and like it was trying to figure itself out.
Yeah.
Which didn't feel like something you would want to lead the film.
Okay. I mean, I've talked about this before on the show, and I will say this is when I discovered it. When I was sitting down one day and I just asked Alexa to play all the Bond theme songs, and it kept and the Amazon player kept going through song after song after song after song, and then it gets to All Time High, and I'm like, what did Alexa change playlists on me? What the hell? What is this? And then I go, that's the theme to Octopussy? Really? Because I had never seen Octopussy. I remember the first time I saw Octopussy was for the show. That's when I finally saw the film. And I remember, Dave, you even telling me that I should enjoy this movie a lot because it felt very Indiana Jones. It was around the same time and had a lot. And well, you're right, it did. It had certain things about it that felt very Indiana Jones, except for the theme song. The theme song, which felt like, again, I'm going, this is like light FM. What's going on?
Yeah.
Why is this song? It's like they went way. Yes. You know, the irony of these types of songs being Bond songs, when today the Bond character, we're talking previous to Pierce Brosnan taking over, is considered to be a very misogynistic character. Having these, soft pop female singing female songs for a character who is everything that's opposite of that. I mean, really, when you think about it, it should be, I wouldn't be surprised if at one point they had Royal Blood doing a Bond song, I mean,
good.
Actually, they are very good.
I like Royal Blood.
They are. No, I did. I saw it was funny. It was on Hulu. They're set at Lollapalooza. I'm like,
Oh,
wow,
yeah.
these guys are good. Yeah, I have their album. They have their first album. I don't have anything else.
Good. Second's good too.
Yeah.
I do want to say, you reminded me by saying Alexa on shuffle. I did have a traumatic experience listening to the playlist I did because the Gladys Knight version of License to Kill was after a like James Bond singers version, and the non-Gladys Knight version was terrible. I was like, this is the one song I hate the most. This is the worst. And then I realized it wasn't the right version of it. And I was like, oh, and I listened to Gladys. I was like, well, it's Gladys. She's doing a good job with this.
Was the version you heard just some random cover?
I don't know. It was like probably a anniversary or something. It was like the Bond singers or something was who it said. I'll find the link and send it. But I couldn't stand it. I literally turned it to the next song because I was like, I can't listen to this. And then Gladys was singing, and I was like, oh, this is much better. But I still don't like it because of the trauma of the previous iteration of this song. So that was I don't really think it's a bad song, but it wasn't my favorite because of that. I was traumatized.
It's funny too because I want to say back when I was young, this is as random as it's ever going to get. We were on a trip in Wisconsin. We were at the Dells, and for some reason, my dad was shopping, and I went into a record store in the Dells, Wisconsin Dells, and they had record albums of like all these. It was a band versions or instrumental versions of all these different theme songs. So they had Star Wars. It had The Spy Who Loved Me. It had the theme from Orca, for folks who don't remember that, among other films. And because I was like, oh, I saw Star Wars, I asked my dad to buy it for me, and he actually bought me the album. I took it home and I listened to it. And listening to this kind of jazz band version of The Spy Who Loved Me, I was like, what? And then when you get to the actual Carly Simon vocals, they don't sing it. You just have somebody. I want to say it was either on a saxophone or on a muted trumpet that they did the melody with. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those. It throws you off. You're like, okay, maybe I probably. And then when I listen to the Star Wars theme, by the way, it turns into a disco version after.
Oh no!
So yeah.
And Dave, I found it. It was a Skyfall 50th anniversary year edition, and they're called the 007 Collective.
Oh, okay. So probably just amateur musician.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why whoever put this on the playlist, but I was like, this is bad.
Now, I don't know if we're going to call them amateur. For all we know, they could be, professional artists.
But I am going to say it's bad.
Ouch.
Plant my flag in the ground.
So to the 007 Collective, if you're happening to watch this, please understand that the opinions expressed by Miss Lizzie Sebastian do not
mine and mine alone.
Yes, do not necessarily reflect those of the Shaken Not Heard
traumatizing
team. All right. Any closing thoughts on the James Bond? So Lizzie, because we've been talking about this for a while, and you are a music aficionado. What have you in diving into this now, and being kind of you're not as deep into James Bond as say Dave is, or probably even me. What are the types of things that you've learned about the Bond, the themes and the songs in your researching this and getting into this for today?
Well, I'll start by saying I think James Bond is unique in that the music is so intertwined with the films, and pop culture. So like half of these songs I'd heard without ever seeing the movie. I've never seen View to a Kill, but it's one of my favorite songs of all time in general. It was on a Duran Duran Greatest Hits CD that I got when I was in middle school, and it's been part of my life since then. So I think it's really cool that you can have this connection to Bond without really knowing it, or like you knew it was a Bond theme song when you heard it, even if it wasn't because you saw the movie or whatever. So I think that's really awesome. And I do think from this deep dive that I've done, you can see the evolution of it. And what Dave was saying of like GoldenEye and Skyfall being harkening back to Goldfinger and trying to be those were, as Dave said, so I'm going to quote him because I'm not the Bond expert, but GoldenEye was this is a new Bond. We're going to go back to the age of Goldfinger just to remind you it's a new Bond. Skyfall was the 50th anniversary, and very much so spies still matter, and this franchise is still going to stick around even though we are moving towards a world where they don't need us. So bring back that older sound. But I did think it was cool that they did try to play with it. I do think it's really interesting hearing Dave's list because I would not have picked those. Because I didn't think of any of those as like Bond themes, but I'm also not a Bond fan. So I think it's interesting to see what the general consciousness thinks of as a Bond theme. And I think it's partially because of the popularity of Live and Let Die that people think like the big bombastic song is going to be, and Goldfinger is a bombastic in your face song, but We Have All the Time in the World, You Only Live Twice, Nobody Does It Better, all of those are more of the, not quieter in the sense of For Your Eyes Only, but like more of the telling of the story and the melody being really what pushes it through. So it's interesting to hear everyone's opinion. But honestly, none of them were bad songs. Some of them were okay songs. But that's pretty impressive to have that many songs and not really have clunkers of just song. They might not be great theme songs, but they're not like, none of them were like, oh God, turn this song off. That's impressive.
No, I agree. Before I forget though, I want to throw, so if you're watching here on the YouTube channel, on Facebook or on Twitch, please real quick, hit us in your comments, your top 5 James Bond themes. I want to real quick, as we're wrapping up here, if you're watching right now, hit us with your top 5. Doesn't have to be in any particular order. Just give us your top 5 James Bond themes in the comments real quick so we can share them before we go out. I will say, Dave, to Lizzie's point about there not being any clunkers of songs. Now, we've talked about this. Like, I have to give the Broccolis and Wilson and Salsa, all of them credit that, yes, were all the Bond movies great? Were all the scripts great? No. But out of all the Bonds that they picked, they were all good Bonds. They were all really good actors that did the best with what they were given. Mm-hmm. I have tremendous respect now for George Lazenby. I have tremendous respect for even more for Timothy Dalton, who I didn't really care for as Bond in the beginning. Who I think now I go, wow, no, actually he was really good.
Yeah.
Moving forward into Sean Connery and talking about and then with Pierce Brosnan and finally Daniel Craig. I'll give the Broccolis a lot of credit that there was a quality control there with the Bond character. Mm-hmm. And when it came to the songs, were they always great theme songs for the movies themselves? Not really, but as Lizzie says, as songs in general, and a song that be honest, you're going to hear it on the radio more than anything. You're going to hear it one time at the movie theater. The rest of the time, you're going to hear it on the radio. I remember I heard Sheena Easton's, For Your Eyes Only, again and again and again and again on the radio. And that's where it stuck to me. Not so much because I saw it in the movie. So I got to give them credit. You're right. It's considering how important the songs are for Bond and the franchise, not a lot of clunkers. I mean, I'll even give you All Time High, which, again, the only reason it throws me off is because it just doesn't feel like a Bond song.
Yeah.
The song itself, like if it comes on Light FM, I'm like, oh, okay. Like you could play this and you could play like a Crisscross, Crisscross is sailing afterwards.
Yeah.
In a mellow mood,
And I really like that. I agree. It doesn't work terribly well as a Bond theme, but that's another example of the melody is just so pretty that when it recurs throughout the score, the love scenes between Bond and Octopussy or whatever, woman it is in the film. It's just, they work so well. It's just such a pretty melody. And you balance that, of course, with the Bond theme that shows up. That's more of the sort of the action theme throughout the film.
Susan answered the call, and her top 5 were Skyfall, the theme for Casino Royale, this is You Know My Name, For Your Eyes Only, Diamonds Are Forever, and Live and Let Die. I think that's pretty good. That's a good.
I like to think that for Casino Royale, she's referring to the Herb Alpert.
The Herb Alpert version. Oh man, that was painful watching that. That was really painful.
Yeah.
Why did I volunteer to do that again?
I should say, you want to talk about themes? You can crap on that movie all you want. That movie gave us the song "The Look of Love," which is a fantastic song by Dusty Springfield.
Yeah. But yeah. Well, yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Which do you like better, Die Another Day or Beautiful Stranger? Because Beautiful Stranger is the song she did for Austin Powers.
See, okay, and again, it's just I can't. It's hard, as you say. Die Another Day on its own as a Madonna song, fine. To me, I'm sitting there and I get, because when I sat and watched Die Another Day again for the show, and I'm sitting through the theme song through this credit, and the credits are like part of the story. I think it's the first time that they actually used the opening montage credits to advance.
Yeah, it is the first and only time.
Yeah.
Is that going for it?
Yeah, and then you're there going, and you're watching Bond getting tortured and all this stuff going on. You're like, oh, man, God damn, Madonna's ruining it right now.
I think
Sigmund Freud.
Yeah. I think we talked about this when we did the Die Another Day episode, but Madonna, I think, did a Bond theme like 10 or 15 years too late.
Mm-hmm.
She had done a Bond theme in like the late 80s, there really weren't any Bond movies happening in the early 90s, but there had been. She could have done a great one at that point in time, but then when she gets like full on into the dance, like techno music later into the early 2000s, like, no, you missed your opening, your window.
Yeah. See, for me, if Shirley Manson and Garbage know this is what happens with a Bond song, and we got to do it like this, because Shirley, Garbage does nothing but great tunes and a lot of dance hits, like boom, boom. I'm Only Happy When It Rains. Help me here. What's another big one of theirs? But they were just in town too, right? A few months ago. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like they're old school band. I mean, they were there too. Madonna should have said to herself, "No, I want to do a real." But then again, the Broccoli's could have said, no, we want you to do it like this. This is Pierce Brosnan's last movie. We're going to have, and then we'll sweeten the deal for you. You even get to appear in the movie too. That didn't take me out at all.
And there you have the compare contrast of how they approached Skyfall, which we talked about with Adele, with it being a British artist, a very throwbacky type theme. And that was an anniversary film, 50th anniversary.
Right.
Another Day was also an anniversary film. It was the 40th anniversary. And that was very much, let's throw in everything in the kitchen sink. We have references to every single previous Bond film up to that point thrown into the movie, some a lot more obvious than others. And yet they went arguably experimental with the theme. They could have had a classic sounding Bond theme with like a really belting type voice doing that type of, like in the mold of Goldfinger, GoldenEye, but they went the experimental route. And in my opinion, it didn't work.
Again, I don't have an opinion on how it works in the movie.
Yeah.
I just liked the song. I was also in middle school when that song came out.
Okay, shut up.
Yeah. I mean, it's like late middle school, early high school. I can't really remember.
Yeah. Thank you.
But
for
somewhere
making me
in
feel
there.
that much
So
old.
I'm allowed to enjoy some Madonna.
I think my beard just went gray right now as you started talking about how about when you saw that movie or when you heard that song.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. Well, hey, I think this has been. I've had a lot of fun bringing back Shake It Not Heard and talking about Bond again. I think we need to come back to talk about Double or Nothing, the new Bond novel that I believe you're reading now, aren't you, Dave?
I am. I'm about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 chapters in. It's interesting. It's first Bond novel, other than the Moneypenny spin-off series, where Bond is not actually a character in it. It focuses solely on the other members of the 00 section, who are all brand new characters, although some of them use names from previous minor characters in Bond history as sort of a little nod to the history of the series. And it's set in the modern day. So you have, it's not really a spoiler, but Moneypenny is the new M. Q, instead of being a person, is like an artificial intelligence system, which is I think a kind of a clever update to that character. And again, I'm only a few chapters in, so there's probably other interesting surprises and new things that I haven't even gotten to yet. But it's cool, and it's supposed to be the start of I believe, a trilogy of books. So yeah, worth checking out.
And I believe, pardon me, Anthony Horowitz has one more Bond novel due out.
That one came out already.
Oh, it came out? Okay.
The Mind to Kill came out a few months ago.
Okay.
And that was pretty cool. He did 3 books, all in wildly different, falling in wildly different spots in the timeline. You have one, a Trigger Mortis, which is I think sort of between, can't remember which Fleming novels it's set between. And then Forever and a Day, which is a prequel to Casino Royale, which was the first one. And then this newest one is after all the Fleming books. So you have like a prequel, sort of an intermediary one, and then a sequel. And I think he's maybe come the closest to sort of capturing the voice of Fleming in his book. So he was a good hire to do the continuation books.
Thomas Jetner just messaged me. Says the Ragnarok cocktail is up. It's a doozy. Ragnarok, for those who are, if you haven't been watching the MCU review, that's the companion show to this particular show. As we're going through all the Marvel films, our next film is Thor Ragnarok, where we will be talking. Dave and I will be joined by John Clark of Caffeinated Comics, as well as another special guest. There are so many people who want to talk about Thor Ragnarok. We're going to have to figure out.
It's a good movie.
It is. And,
I'm not a Marvel fan, but I love Thor Ragnarok.
Do you like Taika Waititi?
I do. I haven't seen enough of his stuff though.
Jojo Rabbit.
But I know. No, I didn't see that. And I've been trying to figure out where to find the movie version of What We Do in the Shadows. Because
That
the TV
one's-
show is hilarious.
I believe.
The show is far funnier than the movie.
Really?
Yeah. And I the movie I look forward, I remember hearing about it for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then after like a couple years of hearing about it, it landed on something, Netflix or something. I finally watched it. It's like, yeah, this is good, but I wasn't blown away by it. I might have set the bar too high, but the show I personally think is way funnier. Way
Really? Because the show is hilarious. And so I want to watch the source material.
The
can't find it.
movie is much drier humor than the show, so that might work for you, it might not. I mean, it's worth seeing. I'm not saying
I'm still gonna try and see it.
yeah,
but-
I vastly prefer the show to the series to the.
I mean, it's hilarious.
Yes, it is.
It's a good show.
Yeah, I hate to be the odd guy out here, but I've tried watching it. I just don't get the humor. I just don't get it. And I even started with the episode that Mark Hamill is in.
Yeah.
Because, you know me, I'm a huge Mark Hamill
Yeah.
fan,
Yeah.
and he loves the show. And he had to be. They got him on the show, and he did it. And I thought his character was hilarious, but the rest of the characters annoyed the fuck out of me. So so anyway, but I will give it another shot. I felt the same way about Star Trek Lower Decks. I didn't think it was that funny. John Clark, again, Caffeinated Comics MCU review, kept talking about how much he loves it. It's his favorite Star Trek show. Maybe it's my mindset. I have to be in the right mindset. Like when Dave and I went to go see Love and Thunder, and those goddamn teenagers were sitting right behind us, talking through the whole thing and ruining the movie for me. And I wasn't a bad.
Get off my lawn.
Pretty much, you know. And I didn't think the movie was as good because of that, probably. So
I haven't heard as many good things about Love and Thunder as I have heard, but also experienced with Ragnarok.
the problem, though, is that, and I will say this, and I am even guilty of this myself, is that like with Love and Thunder, the expectations are so friggin' high because everyone loves Ragnarok so much, and they're like, "Oh my God, Taika Waititi! Oh, this is gonna be the greatest movie ever. We need to see this. Oh, Love and Thunder is gonna be awesome." Then you go into Love and Thunder, and you're like, I mean, and Love and Thunder is essentially like Ragnarok, but more of the same.
Yeah.
And again, if I see it again, and I remember when I get to it, if I watch it again, I might go, oh, okay, the jokes are landing better for me now than they did before. But yeah, right now the problem is nothing can be good without somebody either saying it's the greatest thing in the world, and if it's not the greatest thing in the world, it's crap.
Yeah.
They're doing that like with She-Hulk. You have people who watch a She-Hulk show and they talk about, oh, it's the funniest thing ever. I'm one of those people who love it. But then there are people who are like, the writing is crap. They're hack writers. Oh, it makes no sense, blah, blah, blah. There's nobody in the middle. I'm trying to learn that myself, which is actually something I've learned doing this whole thing with Shaking That Herd, is learning to really appreciate all the things about Bond across the way, because there are people there are Bond fans like Dave's got a friend who thinks that Pierce Brosnan is the worst Bond ever, and which kind of like gets under my skin because Pierce Brosnan is like my favorite Bond.
I mean, I also think that, but I don't hate Pierce Brosnan. Like
Right, that. But I love Pierce Brosnan. I mean, I want to hang out with Pierce Brosnan, you know.
Yeah.
And they're like, I watched the Pierce Brosnan movies, and I can see what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff that they did with Daniel Craig, I can see they started doing with like GoldenEye, but then at one point they lost their nerve and decided to go back to the old Roger Moore formula. You know, whereas Daniel Craig was there saying, no, we're keeping this grounded. We're doing this. So Daniel Craig was very, this is what it's got to be like this. Whereas Pierce Brosnan said, hey, I'll just do what you want me to do.
Well,
That's like something nobody runs through a hail of bullets like Pierce Brosnan. Sorry.
part of that reason is they've kept pretty much the exact same pair of screenwriters for like all the movies going back to the Brosnan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's like those two, and they're already talking about bringing them back for the next version. It's like those guys have more job security than anyone hired by Jerry Reinsdorf. That's what it feels.
For folks who aren't White Sox fans outside of Chicago, that means, you don't have to be good. You just have to know the boss,
Yeah.
But to the point though, again, they know Bond. They really know it. And they know, they know enough to stay within certain parameters where it's still James Bond. You can't go too far outside, because then you find yourself chasing after the Jason Bournes and Ethan Hunt's Mission Impossibles and all that, instead of being true to what the Bond character is. So I have faith they'll figure it out, and they'll do okay moving forward. All right. Before we all go, any closing thoughts? I know we've been winding down. Lizzie, any closing thoughts on the themes and the songs of James Bond?
No, they're all good. I enjoy them. I'm glad that we have songs like Goldfinger and Live and Let Die and A View to a Kill that we wouldn't have without Bond. So thank you, Bond.
Thank you. Dave?
Real quick, 3 worst Bond themes. Die Another Day, Man with the Golden Gun, Another Way to Die. And Another Way to Die primarily because I think Jack White and Alicia Keys' voice just do not complement each other at all. There's no reason that song needed to be a duet. I just wanted to get that out there.
I agree with you there. If it was just Alicia Keys, it would have been fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think they saw that they wanted to continue kind of on that same trajectory as You Know My Name, of like a hard rock Bond theme. Like, let's just do that again with different artists. And they couldn't quite repeat get that same magic again. However, and another really quick side note, even though they were all Oscar winners, one gripe I have with the latter 3 Craig movies, or Craig themes, so Skyfall, Writings on the Wall, No Time to Die, they all sound very similar. Like they're all these mid-tempo, big sweeping, ballads. And I think about the Bond themes of like the 60s and the 70s, where you have a lot of variety. Like you go from Tom Jones to Nancy Sinatra with like that psychedelic sort of aspect. And then you get a completely instrumental theme with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and sort of that lounge dance song with Diamonds Are Forever and so on. And then Live and Let Die being this big first true rock theme. You have a lot of variety. In the last couple 3, you listen to them back to back to back, all kind of similar. They all sound like they're kind of cut from the same cloth. So one thing I'm hoping for with the next take on Bond is we have a little bit more variety musically from theme to theme. As
a Skyfall fan, I'm just going to say Skyfall was very different from the previous one. So it's Sam Smith and Billie Eilish that are.
And I would say it feels like Writings on the Wall and No Time to Die were trying to capture that same magic and success of Skyfall. Both the movies themselves and the theme songs, because Skyfall was just such a huge movie. It made so much money, and it was so successful, critically well received as well. The other thing I really quick wanted to talk about, we didn't have time to talk about it, but there's a album that came out about a month ago called Bond 25, and it is a collection of songs by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra of instrumental renditions of every theme in the series. I believe this was supposed to come out a year ago, and for whatever reason, it got delayed like a year. But it's cool to hear all these songs done in sort of a uniform style. I think about For Your Eyes Only, the score being very the Bill Conti score gets a lot of crap, Elliot, and we talked about like the action scenes with the kind of cheesy synthesizers and everything. But hearing those themes, and yes, even a song like Die Another Day, they're able to make that work in that sort of big John Barry-esque orchestral style. It's cool hearing all the songs in chronological order done in the same style. And some songs get a little bit of a artistic license given to them, or they sound a bit different from the versions that you hear in the film. So that is also worth checking out.
You can. I was listening to it on my Amazon player, and I got the From Russia with Love stuck in my head like for all freaking day. It would not leave my head. So yeah,
Did you listen to the whole album?
yeah,
Yeah, cool.
No, and the Dying of the Day, they did it. They do play different, and View to a Kill is really different.
You know what? The View to a Kill is I could be wrong. I think there is a cue in the score by John Barry called "Wine with Stacy," which is the Bond girl. Stacy Sutton is the Bond girl in the film, and it's this very sort of slow, romantic, subdued version of View to a Kill, but very slowed down. And that's from a particular scene in the movie, and I think the version that is on that album is based on that arrangement.
That's what it sounded like. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I remember going, "Oh no, this isn't the theme song. This is the score. This is like the bit when you hear it in the score."
Yeah, exactly.
Very much slower, and it's great. It sounds great. Don't get me wrong. It sounds great. And again, the orchestral bit, and so I would strongly encourage. If you can get it on any of your players. And real quick, because Susan, again, great viewer, constantly watching and supporting us, had this to say about what we do in the shadows. Love the show, the movie not so much. So, there we go.
Fair enough.
Has a much wider appeal, and it's a much more of American style of humor than the show. Lizzie, did you? I don't remember if we talked about this. Were you a Flight of the Conchords fan?
Yeah. No,
okay,
I love that show.
The movie is comedy-wise is more in line with that show than the humor of the What We Do in the Shadows series.
Yeah.
See, you know what? Then I'm thinking I'm going to like the movie more.
Yeah, you probably will.
Yeah,
and
you probably will.
Yeah.
He's one of the main vampires in it, so that alone.
Because the Flight of the Conchords is one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
Those guys are. What's it called? Jermaine. There was one time it was on Twitter. He actually responded to me on Twitter once. I was like, "Oh my god,
what?
Jermaine, Flight of the Conchords." I was dating a gal at the time. I should have told her. He responded to me on Twitter. Would have scored such points. She loved them. Not me, not so much. All right, same as Susan with the movies. All right, before we go, Lizzie, where can people find you on social media?
On Instagram, I am Seabass_, like that. I'm stalling because I'm opening Twitter to see what my actual Twitter is. Because I think it's Liz_Seabass. It is, yes. So on Instagram, I'm Seabass_. And on Twitter, I'm Liz_Seabass.
If you follow Lizzie on Instagram, you will have to suffer through watching the poor girl, all the trials she endures attending music festivals like Riot Fest and Lollapalooza and all those things.
Yeah. You also get weekly, if not more than that, updates on my cats.
Your kitty cats
laying around.
Who made an appearance earlier today?
They did.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Normally at this point, I tell people, well, if you're listening to the podcast, you're not seeing the video. Shaken Not Heard doesn't have a podcast. We don't have an audio version, so the only way you can really listen to us is on Facebook Live and on YouTube. Dave.
I am on Instagram at Pinto_Noir.
And why do we want to follow you on Instagram?
I pretty regularly share photos and stories of my little goblin of a dog,
Dexter.
It's true.
But you also shared pictures of our trip to the Volo Museum.
Yeah, that was fun. And then the James Bond corn maze at Richardson Farms. That was an adventure as well.
That was an adventure, folks. If you haven't, I did post it also on the Shaken Not Heard Instagram. If you go to instagram.com/Shaken Not Heard. Dave and I went to the Volo Museum. as well as the Richardson Adventure Farm, where the theme was 60 years of James Bond, and they're the world's largest corn maze, which was cut to look like the faces of Roger Moore, Sean Connery, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig. George Lazenby was forgotten. Got denied. People commented on that.
And they didn't have the space for him because they had a whole Aston Martin there.
There was an Aston Martin and a building in the middle, which we don't know what that was supposed to be. I don't know if there was supposed to be Big Ben or the MI5.
Yeah, the MI6 building.
MI6 building, fine. And Lizzie, you'll find this amusing. I told Dave, because we had a little map of the corn maze, and I saw Dave. I go, Dave, I need to go up into Pierce Brosnan's nose, which we did. We found Pierce Brosnan's nose, and I could say I picked Pierce Brosnan's nose.
Proud of you.
We were with a whole bunch of other people who were just standing around and going, I go, folks, we're in Pierce Brosnan's head right now. And they found that amusing. So anyway, but yeah, the world's largest corn maze. And it's like everybody decided to go out that day to the corn maze.
Wasn't it cold too?
It was chilly, but it wasn't too cold.
So
it wasn't like today.
No, it was sunny. There was a lot of sun. So we did okay. But you'll see pictures on our Instagram of us at the corn maze. I swear, Dave, you were smiling like a kid on Christmas. You were like, you looked so happy, even though you were not happy with the food, but everything else.
I mean, I was just happy that I had just eaten, regardless of the quality of it. I was so hungry the time we finished at the museum.
Oh, yes. And we were at the Volo Museum where we saw the Die Another Day Aston Martin, which really isn't an Aston Martin. It's the chassis of the shell of an Aston Martin on the chassis of a Jaguar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to, it's like two things. And it's supposed to be invisible. People were saying, why? I shouldn't be able to see it. The car should be invisible.
And I think the actual one James Bond drove wouldn't have a sticker that says James Bond 007 on the door like this one did. I saw.
Well, again, James Bond is the worst undercover agent because he announces who he is every time he shows up somewhere.
And every bartender in the world knows his drink.
Yeah. And I am Elliot Serrano. You can follow me at Elliot Serrano with 2 L's, 2 T's, and 2 R's. Thank you. If you're also following us on Instagram, Instagram.com/Say You're Not Heard. Also, watch us on the MCU Review. If you go to Facebook.com/MCU REVU. You can see the archive to our shows where we talk about different Marvel movies. If you go to Instagram.com/REVU Cocktails, you will see the different themed cocktails that our friend Thomas Jetner has done, has done for the MCU Review. And if you go back on the Instagram for Shaken Not Heard, you will also see the different themed cocktails that Thomas has done for that show. By the way, no one ever asked me, but I just polished off probably one of the largest vodka martinis I've ever had right now. It was strong. It was strong. Nice. So anyway, but I am impressed that I'm able to complete thoughts right now after all that. Anyway, thank you, Lizzie, for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And thank everyone. Thank you, everyone, for Susan. Thank you so much. Lehman, everyone who watches the show. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for commenting. Until next time, this has been Elliot Serrano with Dave Pinto and Lizzie Sebastian. This has been Shaken Not Heard, the podcast, the James Bond podcast that no one listens to. It has been for your ears only. Good night, everyone.